Okay, from security, which, by the way, if I really wanted to depress you, or if that didn't depress you enough, the beautiful thing about cybersecurity is that we'll talk about it every single day for the rest of our natural lives, and it's an arms race. On any given day, the bad guys are going to be ahead of the good guys and vice versa. So be vigilant. Thank you, General. I appreciate that. I'd like to switch gears now, if we could. Infrastructure does take on a lot of different forms, as we all know. Municipal infrastructure in the United States specifically, but even globally, is a fantastically interesting and unfortunate subject, in that here in the United States, you can find anybody who works in government and they'll start to tell you about the aging infrastructure in the United States. That's the unfortunate part. But from that kind of degradation of our, let's say, some of our bridges and tunnels and tolls and roads are 50 to plus 150 years old. There's also infrastructure in place in municipal transportation that literally, getting the trains to run on time, although updated, let's say, in the last 50 to 75 years, haven't been updated in the recent memory of man or beast. This leaves amazing opportunities for interesting organizations to exploit not only the infrastructure as it is, and to find new ways to add value to the equation, but more than anything, it allows this major trend in consumer behavior to be leveraged. And the behavior change that is probably unsung in this room and in the infrastructure conversation is the on-demand economy. What infrastructures are required for it to exist? And until we get there, how can different types of infrastructures be imposed on the existing infrastructure to leverage and make the on-demand economy accretive to consumers? Now, how many people in this room have used Waze? Yeah. Is it the next coming of the Lord Jesus, is it not? That's kind of a weird metaphor for this room. I'll take that back. So imagine, if you can or will, a company that created Waze for the rest of us. If you used public transportation and just always wished you knew exactly where you were, what was going on, such a company is here right now. It's known as Moovit. It's awesome. If you haven't downloaded the app, I insist. He's not allowed to ask you to do it, but I'll tell you right now, download this app. If you ever take public transportation, it will change your life. Let's hear exactly how from Nir Erez, who's the CEO and co-founder of Moovit. Let's give a big hand.
So hi everybody, thank you for having me here. My name is Nir Erez and I'm the CEO of Moovit. And the risks of cyber are so frightening. So with public transportation, your only risk is to miss your bus. So it's not such a big deal. But I would like to tell you a little bit how we revolutionize the local transportation around the world. So most of you are using Waze, but I just want to let you know that there are about 7 billion people around the world, and there are only 900 million cars. So many people are using public transportation on a daily basis around the world. It's a little bit weird to talk about it in Menlo Park in California, but it's more relevant here in New York, of course. So Moovit was actually started about almost 3 years ago, and we were lucky enough to have great investors, and we raised $81 million to date. And we're trying to really change the world of public transportation. So based on our users' experience, public transportation is a really big portion of our lives. Depends on the size of the city and how much time it takes to get from point A to point B. But if you think about it, the biggest frustration in public transportation is about information. There's not enough money in all Sand Hill Road in California to finance the infrastructure of public transportation, but there's enough money to change this frustration about information. So you don't know when the bus will arrive. Are you going to miss your train? What is the estimated time of arrival? All of these questions are questions that each one of us asks themselves on a daily basis. So eventually it looks like this. So people are just sitting there waiting for the bus, don't know what will happen in a few minutes. The way we approach the problem is that we combine multiple sources of information, starting from getting information from municipals or Ministry of Transport, which provides us with schedule data, which is always something that they wish will be correct. and then all kind of alerts or point of interest within the city. Then we get data from the operators themselves, like MTA, which is very advanced, but not the same it's not the same all over the world. And we also take a lot of data from the crowd. And this is something very special that we do with Moovit that gives us a huge advantage. We take all this information, we combine it together, and then we are actually in a position to tell people about their trip and their next bus and the different ways to get from point A to point B, and even in some places to pay for their public transportation trips. So the way we do it is we're actually becoming the omni-search for the metro area. And the vision is that in a few years from now, if you do not own a car and you want to go from point A to point B, you will be able to actually ask Moovit and get a multiple types of solutions or trips that includes public transportation, but also additional types of transportation, including taxi, car sharing, carpooling, etc. So it's not only about the solution, but it's also about the user experience. So today we already developed solutions for the wearables, means the Android wearables and the new Apple Watch, which, you know what, they gave us a few hours with this watch in a closed room that nobody is allowed to get their phones into, but it is working on Apple Watch as well. So the way we handle the data, just to let you know, starts with a very rudimentary and basic layer, which is the static data. This is the data that exists in any metro around the world, which includes the location of the bus stops and train stations, but also the original and planned timetables. We combine it with the map, and by itself, it allows us to give you a plan of multimodal trip plans. But what we add on top of it is another layer of statistical data. When users are actually navigating with Moovit, we collect a lot of statistical data, and we know for sure that on Friday at 6 p.m., bus number 38, always late in like 8 minutes. So why would we provide the original data if we know statistically that bus number 38 will be late in 8 minutes because of traffic? So this is another level of accuracy that we add to the app. On top of it, in some areas, we do get a real-time feed from the operators. The US is quite good about providing this information, but in most of the world, this information exists, but nobody wants to share it with the users. It's mainly owned by the operators. If we don't have this layer, we take the GPS location from our users, and all of a sudden, we are able to provide a real-time information based only on users who are actually using Moovit in real time. The last layer we call the soft data layer, which includes how many available seats are there, how clean the bus is, are there available bike racks, and all kind of different pieces of information that can be helpful for users who are actually waiting for the bus. So today, we provide our solutions with 36 languages in 55 countries, more than 600 cities around the world. We support about 4,100 operators, MTA just one of them. And we have in our database about 3.2 million bus and train stops. And we generate 80 million daily data points provided by our users. This is how we grew in the last 2 years, from 0 to more than 17 million users. Our growth rate is about almost 1.5 million users a month. So we're getting about 50,000 downloads a day. So thank you for downloading it today. You helped in about 0.5%. The most important thing that people don't know is that we're generating a service in a new city every day now. And this is crazy because we are less than 70 people. Most of them are based in Israel. So we're disrupting the world of public transportation from a small town 10 kilometers to the south of Tel Aviv, Nes Ziona, and this is how we do it. We have a huge group of editors that volunteer to help us. It's a little bit less than 10,000 people around the world that are running more than 900 projects. Every project is a new city in parallel now, and helping us to build the infrastructure in their own city. Once they complete to build the data, we launch the app, and their family and their friends and the rest of the city commuters can actually use the app. All they get is a t-shirt, and we put them on the wall of fame at Moovit office. So this is just an example of the top 5 transportation apps around the world. And what's interesting here is you can see the icons, of course, is that beside Moovit, the rest of the apps are taxi apps. What it actually means is the potential in public transportation, which is way bigger from a user perspective than the taxi, is still huge, and we're leveraging it every day now. This is a quick story about how municipalities or city halls are actually treating apps like Moovit. So we came to Rome about a year and a half ago and said, hey, you have the data, can we get it? They said, no, nobody will get it ever. So we launched the app in Rome, and after like 4.5 months, we got 100,000 users in Rome, and we asked them if they want statistical data. They said, of course. So we started to provide them statistical data, and after 2 months, they said, you know what? We're going to give you the real-time feed for free exclusively. We didn't even ask for it. So about a few months later, there was the Pope canonization last year, and there were about 3 to 4 million people coming to Rome, and they didn't have any way to communicate back with the users, telling them about the roads that are closing. So they asked if we could help them and provide direct communication to the public transportation users. And they actually promoted on the electronic board saying everybody should use Moovit in order to get information and alerts about changes in public transportation. So that is kind of an example of how we work with authorities around the world. Same thing happened with Rio de Janeiro and Sao Paulo during the World Cup last year. So this is the control room in Rio de Janeiro, and we've created a small app that showed them how long it takes to get from Copacabana to the center of the city. My last slide is actually talking, everybody's asking how you're going to make money out of it. So we don't need to, because we raise so much money, we don't need to make any money. But fortunately enough, by the way, you can laugh, but our investors are really insist that we're going to focus on growth and still providing value to our users rather than generate revenues. However, there are multiple ways that we're experimenting right now about revenue generation. One of them is selling bus and train tickets electronically using the app. And we started it in Poland, and it's really working great, but it's very high regulated around the world. It will take a few years before everybody will understand that. The other thing is that we're combining taxi now into our multimodal trips, and this is another source. And the third one, of course, is location, or in our case, destination-based advertisement that we're starting to experiment. So I'm out of time, and thank you very much for listening to my story.